Welcome, everyone, to the captive audience. It is the 25th of February. And sorry, we had some technical problems, but we got them solved in kind of a backdoor sort of way. But we're very fortunate to have with us here today uh, Chris Gray, who is Communications Director for the Young Republicans of Oregon. And he's also, I think, best described as a correspondent for the Oregon Catalyst and working with the Taxpayers Association of Oregon, amongst many other talents. And he is here today to talk to us about what's happening not only in the news and with young Republicans, but also some of the things he got to witness recently here over the last weekend. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
So, why don't we start at the top? Tell people a little bit about who you are and what you're doing, because Young Republicans, it's a group that's what 18 to 35, 39 years of age, kind of the junior party, but with leadership opportunities. And you're serving as the communications director. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So we are the youth branch, as I would say, of the Republican Party, and we are doing what we can to recruit, train, elect the next generation of conservative leaders in Oregon. So what we try to do is support Republican efforts to convert this heavy blue state into a much livable, much better state for Republicans and conservatives. Right now, we are in the midst of a recruitment drive, which is going great. And if anyone here wishes to join us, then come on board. If you're between the age of 18 to up to 40, you can join the Young Republicans today.
Well, that's great. And I think so. How did you get involved with the group?
Well, about 2 years ago, I was working and I saw my taxes keep on getting taken away from me. I worked my butt off, long days, long hours. I was working in the construction industry for a while, building houses out here in Oregon and, well, assisting the construction industry. I was a customer care rep. And in the end, I felt like I was just not getting ahead. And I got so fed up with how things were going in my home state that I just wanted to change things. So out of blue, I just search up Republican groups that are youthful, and I joined the Young Republicans. And then it's just been a snowball effect of late because it really just went on super fast. I was asked immediately to help create content for the Young Republicans, starting with our podcast series. And then I was asked then to go help my county party out here in Yamhill County. And then in the end, it just blossomed. I went to the platform convention. I then was able to ascend to leadership into my organization of the Young Republicans, becoming the communications director. And then I got to represent Oregon at my greatest political feat as a delegate for Oregon and choosing to have the Republican nominee be Donald J. Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance.
Wow. So that's quite a whirlwind. And I'm putting in some of the information that people can refer to if they want to see you. I think you pasted it in there too. The podcasting link and the website. And then, of course, I'm going to post it. You got, and this is stuff that you work with on a regular basis too. Facebook. I know I haven't changed it over from X to X.com yet, but I'm sure it'll take people to the right location. Twitter.
That's correct.
And then
redirect.
Instagram and even YouTube. And this is actually when we say, well, geez, we need more young people involved. That's what you guys are doing. And of course, there's a lot of youth in the entertainment. I'll just share with folks that was my first foray into things. I was an older young Republican when I got into it. But back in 2003 and 2004, I got involved with the Washington County Young Republicans. And somebody said, you seem to have a lot of ideas. Why don't you be the chair? And I'm like, okay. So I started doing that and started working on a campaign, a couple of different campaigns. One of them was for gathering signatures on a tax referral petition. to send what became Measure 30 to the ballot. And then I worked on a congressional campaign in District 1, which back 20 years ago was competitive. And somebody saw that and said, why don't you get involved with the senior party? And they asked me to run for chair of the Washington County GOP. And I just brought in all the young Republicans with me. And it was quite something. It can happen. And it can be the way we keep renewing ourselves as a party. Now, as communications director, you're also probably talking about the issues a bit. And then you got involved with the Taxpayers Association of Oregon here more recently, where you're out snooping for stories and finding leads and pursuing politically relevant items. And of course, you've had a couple of very interesting ones recently that you've told me about. One was, I think you went out and covered the protests in favor of stopping the Trump administration from deporting illegal criminal aliens. And that was going on in Salem, right? I think you got some pretty interesting pictures from that, and then incorporated that in some of the coverage that you guys did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was an interesting experience. So it was kind of a hodgepodge of a type of protest. Obviously, it was very anti-Trump, anti-Elon. They hate Doge. I don't know why. They're just showing off the extreme bloat within our government. And I think Elon and Trump are doing fantastic work. We're saving tax dollars millions and millions, almost at this rate, trillions of dollars that are going to wasteful projects that have no benefit to the United States. And soon, I think we'll get to $1 billion at this rate, because it's just extreme negligence at this point, and maybe even far worse. But when I was there, we had all types of people. Those were, I would say, some were definitely Antifa. I did see some notable Antifa members there. And then there was just, what was the really surprising factor was it was mostly older people. I would say definitely around 57 plus, if I had to guess, the vast majority of those people. And you can see that in the videos and photos that we covered during that first protest. And I just found it very interesting. And in addition, I actually acquired a bunch of their leaflets and their propaganda pieces. And I had the extreme displeasure of reading some of it.
Yeah, they really went to town on Marxism, didn't they? It seemed like they were just unabashed Marxist, anti-American.
Exactly. It was blatant. One of them was really bad. It was openly anarcho-communism. It was straightforward, quoting Karl Marx. They even had Antifa propaganda, their literature, and their whole political philosophy into it.
Wow. Well, and the thing is, I think they've gotten a little bit more refined in the last few weeks, as they always do, because now they're holding these town halls with Merkley and Wyden. Well, I don't know about Wyden. Wyden's in New York, but Merkley and Bonamici. I think Hoyle's been at some of these. These are the senators and representatives in Congress from Oregon, and they've got 400 or 500. Latest one was a 2,000 in Clackamas, and I just heard today actually some of these rallies that we're hearing about are actually being organized with some Soros money, which means it's USAID actually, which comes full circle back to, gee, why do they hate Doge? But it is amazing that they are coming out with this truthful face of hating accountability and transparency. It's not a great campaign strategy, but you caught them live with photos and reported it. And of course, the areas where people can find this reporting, one is one that we use all the time, Oregon Watchdog, on this show, which is, of course, tied to it's like a sister publication that puts out the stories, and Watchdog is more like a news aggregator site where you can just go find the best headlines from around the state that conservatives would want to see. And then Oregon Catalyst comes in with actual stories that are, being published, and that's where you publish some of this. And there's another story, I think, by the way, that you published this last weekend, covering the goings on at the Republican State Central Committee meeting, which took place in Portland, where they were, where they voted on the new leadership for the state party, and it's all new leadership, as I understand it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, just a minor correction. Only 2 members are still from the past administration, but they were voted in last year, and that would be Dan Mason.
They weren't voted on Saturday, though.
Yeah,
that's why.
Yeah. But Dan Mason, and who is our national committee man, and Tracy Honnell are still, who is our national committee woman, are still on the board, but they were recently voted a year ago, so they got some time. And I have nothing against them. They're incredibly lovely. And it was a very interesting election. Obviously, the main show of the ORP meeting was the chairman election. And there were 5 candidates, which was Joe Ray Perkins, Ben Edel, Gabe Bueller, Jerry Cummings, and then I can't remember the last one. Anthony Sanchez.
Yep.
So
I'm looking at your article. I just posted it.
I just went off my memory. But anyway, it was very interesting. I had not really much stake in this election. I was there mostly as an observer to understand what was going on with the party. I do have good relationship with Washington County. If I had to choose anyone who I thought was going to win, I thought it was going to be Gabe Bueller, because they have a very strong cohort. So round 1 began after a long discussion about what their platforms were. And I felt
gave their speeches, right? They all had to give their speeches, and then they also they got to answer questions.
Which I found that most of them were in line in all their messages. There were some tangents here and there. Some wanted more transparency. Some wanted to focus on critical elections. But in the end, all had a similar root. It was just the way they delivered, their actions, and how they conveyed themselves to the general body. So round 1 began, and Jerry Cummings came in pretty strong. I believe he captured around 47 votes, with Sanchez coming right behind with around, I want to say, 33. Bueller come in around somewhere between low 20s. Ben Edel came in 4th, and Joe Ray Perkins came in last, and she was knocked out in the first round.
Yeah, they have to get to 50%, right, of the delegates in order to have a winner, and and then I think each round they drop automatically the lowest vote getter, right? And it's not ranked choice voting. This is you don't rank anybody.
It was not ranked choice voting whatsoever. It was straight on. If you have vast majority, which out of 28 voting members, at least that's my memory from the convention, if you require above, bad math right now, but if you get 50% of 128, you win. You become chairman. So after Joe Ray was kicked out of by the first round, it went to the second round. And the rankings stayed the same. There was a little bit more in some areas of who got more votes. Jerry was still in a very strong lead. Sanchez was right behind him, I would say, at this point.
He had 43 votes, if I recall.
I believe that is correct. And then Gabe held strong with his current amount of votes. And Ben Edel was eliminated. He lost around 5 votes. I believe he had around 17 votes in his first round, and then he dropped down to 12 in the second round. So Ben Edel was knocked out. But here was the big surprise of the election. Gabe decided that he would step out of the election after coming in 3rd place. I believe he said he does not see a foreseeable way to win. And the most shocking factor was he endorsed Jerry to become the next ORP chairman. And I believe that was the nail in the coffin for the election. Because after that, in the final round, Jerry had clear majority.
Yeah, that was the swing vote. I mean, it was still a decently close election in the end, but Jerry got the lion's share, I think, of Gabe Bueller's votes based on that endorsement is what you're saying, I think, right? And so, um, and at that point, so Jerry Cummings became the state chairman, and it's a 2-year term. So 2 years from now, there will be another election, but the term runs through the next general election, and of course, a lot of work to do because there's a governor's race. And we actually, at the meeting, we actually heard from the 2022 nominee, Christine Drazen. She is the leader of the minority, Republican minority in the state house, the legislature in Salem. And we also heard from, I believe, the deputy leader or
Deputy leader of the Senate, Republican, David Brocksmith.
Yep. And they just apprised us of what's at stake, what's going on. They were there to observe and to then give these presentations. Those were given while we were waiting for other offices to be counted and voted on. But I think it was pretty. And so they had 3 rounds of voting, right? Chair, and then they went on to the vice chair position, correct?
Yes, that one was a very big surprise because it was an open and close election. I can't remember her names, but Connie, if you can give me her last name.
Welshel, I think is, yep.
So she came in very strong and won in the first round with a overwhelming majority, around 60% of the vote. She had 117 votes, and it was just open and shut. There's not much else to say about that one.
Yeah, her main challenger, Lori Kimmel, got most of the rest of the votes, and then there was a third candidate who unfortunately had some personal emergency and couldn't be there, and so yeah, that one was cut and dried, and she's very focused from what we saw on get out the vote because she was somebody who headed that up in the last election cycle. And she's from Deschutes County. Jerry's from Columbia County, correct?
That's correct.
So, what did Jerry Cummings, the new chair, say he wants to focus on?
Yeah, so we have a just something that's going through review right now through the editorial, and I had the opportunity to have a brief conversation with him right after the whole meeting came to an end. And if I pull it up real quick, if you just spare me a moment, so that way I can pull up my notes on the interview.
And while you're doing that, I'll just mention that I've posted a link to the article where people can just kind of read the news. I thought, by the way, I was there too. I thought that there was a lot of energy. Frankly, there was a lot of worry about disunity. I didn't see a lot of disunity.
I have to say that's the strongest thing about this election. It showed us that the party is united more than ever at this point. It seems like we've all found certain leadership that just seems to have a great synergy with one another. And I know that Jerry has really good parliamentary skills. I saw how he ran the meeting when he became chair, and it was, I will listen to my parliamentarian. You're out of order, but I understand where you're coming from. Polite but firm.
Yep. Yeah, and I think also because the design of Robert's rules is that the minority is heard within the structure of the rules, and the majority rules, and you get the business done and you move on. Or you decide not to get business done and delay it to a future date if that's the will of the Central Committee. But it does seem like they really did. I mean, people were sounding many of the same themes, and so it was more and by the way, I should explain that the Central Committee consists of the chairs and vice chairs from every county in the state, for which there are chairs and vice chairs. I think there are 34 counties or 35 counties that have chairs out of the 36, and 32 were present at this meeting. And then there's also, for bigger counties, there's additional delegates that those counties get, because obviously they have larger populations. And so someone like Washington County has 8 total representatives, 6 delegates, and a chair and vice chair. And that's the Central Committee. So, and those people are all elected by the precinct committee persons, which a lot of people don't even know what those are. But those are individuals who are elected on the ballot in the May primary election every 2 years by Republicans. So if you're a Republican and you saw those names on your ballot, that's who those people are. And then they turn around, they elect the county leadership elect the state leadership. And believe it or not, three members of the state leadership go to the national committee, and they are the ones who elect the national leadership. The national committee man and woman that you mentioned earlier, and the new state chairman, Jerry Cummings, they're the ones who go to those Republican National Committee meetings that happen usually once a quarter, once every 3 months, and they govern the national party. So it's a representative form of government.
Yes, and speaking on that, I did have a brief conversation with Tracy Connell after the election, and she already contacted the chair of the RNC, and there's already good relationship going. There should be a great synergy with Oregon and RNC.
Some of your audio is cutting out. You might move a little bit closer to the mic.
All right, let's try this again. So there is great relationship between RNC and ORP right now. Tracy immediately contacted via text message the chair of the RNC and had a great positive relationship, saying that we have a great new chairman coming in, and the RNC chairman is looking forward to meeting him soon.
That's great. Well, so that's the positive side. The tough side is that we didn't win very much here in Oregon in 2024. We're happy to see what happened in the national level, but what we're doing in our own backyard, there's a lot of work to do. We actually lost ground in the state legislature, and not to be a negative Nelly, but it just means that we got to roll up our sleeves and fix Oregon now, because we also lost a seat in Congress, and we had a tough fight in at least in several of those seats, and now we're going to have a governor's race. And we're going to be talking briefly here about what's happening at the state level with taxes and maybe a little bit with our governor. So, but anyway, you did say you got to talk with Jerry Cummings a little bit.
That's correct. So when I asked him what was his primary focus, his first initiative, becoming chair, he wants to immediately work with the legislative leaders. So he will be reaching out and having open conversations with Representative Drazen, who's leading Republicans in the House, and then Daniel Bonham in the Senate. So that way they can form a strategic plan for 2026. So they're already thinking, we are in the run. We are going to fight hard. We're going to get to this right away. He also spoke highly about the new executive team, saying that he has a great positive relationship with everyone coming in and has nothing at all to question their ability to lead. All of them are experienced leaders. All of them do great. And he also has a great treasurer with him. It's his friend. Jerry was the former executive director of Congressional District 1 for the Republican Party. And he worked with the treasurer, the new current treasurer, Glenn Miller, as he was the treasurer for CD1 as well. So they already have a great synergy. We're not going to have, my guess, any problems with financial reporting from the Republican side.
We also got in the treasurer and the secretary run contested races. Only one candidate filed, but as you said, Glenn has a lot of experience and will keep the books clean. And then Cherie Brady.
Yeah, I know Cherie personally, and I cannot say the ORP has one of the best people to be the secretary. She knows her stuff. She knows how to get things done, and she's already, from what I can tell, already keeping county parties informed, keeping them within the grasp of what's going on. We don't have to worry about much communication issues. We'll have the occasional, because everyone has the occasional communications mess up. But I think in the end, we're going to have a very effective and well-oiled machine for the ORP.
Well, and I see what Les is saying here about the chair election. Effectively, it did end up being a runoff of the top two. But to figure out who those top two were going to be, which did turn out to be the top two in the first round, but that doesn't always happen.
No, not at all.
And what it does give is the current system does give the Central Committee the maximum latitude to decide who those final top two are. I know some folks are not a fan of that system, but we don't have a primary. But if you look at it, it's kind of like that system. It takes multiple candidates and narrows it down eventually to top two. Because once you have two top candidates, what you have is one's going to win because he's going to get the majority.
Yes, and there is a complaint about this system. It did take a long time to get our new chair. I believe it was honestly around a 3-hour election off the top of my head.
Yeah, and there might be ways to accelerate it because in theory you could have dropped the top two. And if you have that many candidates, you could have dropped the bottom two after the first round and probably gotten there faster. But again, the same concept, because you could have a top two where if you have enough candidates, the top two, one gets 33 votes out of 128 and the other gets 32. There's a lot of votes out there that might actually go to someone else that are split up amongst a plethora of candidates. And we know that that's what primaries do, which there are activists who in Oregon who are trying to get rid of primaries because they would like it to be all decided in one big election. And that is what's led to actual ranked choice voting, which we are displeased to have and confused by in Portland right now. And it got voted down statewide. So anyway, why don't we move on to some of the issues here with the time we got left? Because, and there's been some news that's interesting. Governor Kotek is finally starting to show up. I guess she was in D.C. at this National Governors Association conference, and she listened to Trump, and then, of course, we know President Trump had something to say about how Maine is fighting to keep men in women's sports, and he's not going to tolerate that or dispense federal funds to a state that does that. Didn't hear it from Kotek about too much about that. She always pays lip service to it, but she did say she's going to uphold Oregon's sanctuary laws, which is a great way to attract all the criminals that got into this country that don't want to be deported, is come to Oregon. So she just sent up a big flare there. But there's also another big issue that's engulfing the Kotek administration, and it is the wildfire maps. So there was a rally right in the state capitol today to repeal those wildfire maps. And people are absolutely livid about these maps because many people will be unable to get insurance in the state of Oregon unless some new system is put into place like what they have in California to have the state provide that insurance. And guess what? The state insurance fund in California is bankrupt.
It failed completely.
Yeah. After one big fire.
And I think because of the LA fires back in January, which those people are still suffering from the horrific damage. I cannot even imagine if we in the valley of Oregon ever had something to that extent. I don't think Oregon could recover from a great fire like that. And we already experienced so many fires. Last year, we saw that half of our beloved state, Eastern Oregon, was on fire. I believe everything from Southern Oregon all the way to up near Hermiston was just ablaze.
2 million acres this last year.
It was the most destructive fire in our state's history. And from what I've heard from representatives and senators from the Republican side, it's mostly due to unmanaged government property, aka federal land. The federal.
Well, David Brock Smith said 83% of the fires start on federal lands.
Yes, exactly. And I remember hearing Senator Noah Robertson talking about how the maps themselves are completely fundamentally wrong because the data modules that they use to generate these maps, the programs, cannot adapt rapidly and as fast as possible to the
I think your audio is breaking up just a tiny bit again.
So it could be, my apologies for that, but I'll just repeat. We have a problem with our system of making these maps because the data cannot adapt to the changing environmental conditions. We all know that in winter, it rains. It rained pretty bad. In fact, we had a really terrible windstorm. In fact, we were supposed to do this call yesterday, and I lost power last night because it was 50-mile-per-hour wind taking out transformers nearby me.
Yep.
But these conditions will change no matter what. We have dry seasons. We have wet seasons. Every time it's past late July, it's fire season. It gets too hot. We have a lot of kindling on the ground. Our forests are not pruned to prevent fires climbing up trees, which is the main cause of why these wildfires get really terrible, all the kindle that's on the ground. And it comes back to the fact we're not managing our forests. And then we're not paying our firefighters well because we had a big problem just at the end of 2024 where contractors and firefighters were not paid by state government because there was mismanagement of the funds. Fortunately, it was bipartisan. We got it done, and the Oregon Department of Forestry director resigned.
Well, so just a couple more stories I thought I might mention, and then we should launch into the taxes. So Governor Kotek not only has the wildfire problem, which she's not done anything to solve the issue that you've talked about, which is making sure that we manage our forests. We still aren't there. And of course, at the federal level, we have a very good chance of the president making a difference on that. But as we know, groups in Oregon like to fight against this. They're the ones who gave us the system that has a lot of forests burned. Then you've got the problem of homelessness and housing. Homelessness, the latest news is in Portland. It's actually back to COVID level of homelessness. And that means it's getting worse because so much of what's been happening in Portland has been the way the state goes, and it's also driven a lot of the costs that we have. And then housing, the big headline in the Portland Business Journal is that Portland permits are plummeting and the housing crisis is worsening. These are the things Tina Kotek said she was going to solve. And to solve those things, she was going to take whatever action was necessary. So far, all we can see is that the state legislature is very focused on raising some taxes. What are some of those taxes?
Well, there's too many dang taxes in the legislature right now. There's increasing bottle bill. There's even some taxes that are hidden in taxes. One that caught my eye today, and I just got done research into it. I got tipped off by one constituent who was asking some more information from the Taxpayer Association of Oregon. And he informed me that, hey, I heard from some guy that they put water meters on wells. So I can tell you from personal experience, almost all wells are water rights. So we have, now that the state wants to come and measure how much water you're using, so you are forced by this legislative bill, and let me pull it up real quick if I still have it in front of me. Yes, I do. It's HB 3419. And when you look at the bill as it was presented, it was just a one-pager. It's like, hey, we just want to study more about water usage in our state. But if you go to the amendment section, then you see in the amendment section under 3, you see, yeah, we want to put water meters into this so that way we can see how much water it's using in certain areas. But when you look into certain areas, that could be all of Oregon because we have occasional droughts. We have farmers using a lot of water from rivers and ponds and etc. So this is in a way, a carte blanche way to have the state come in, the ability to tax you, because if you fail to report your water, you get a big fine. And then in addition, you're constantly watched. So now Oregon, one of our more prized resource, our water, is now even more under the control of the state. And this is not acceptable in any state.
They aren't charging us for oxygen yet. They are charging us for carbon dioxide, but they aren't charging us for oxygen yet. But that's next, right?
Well, don't give them too many ideas. They might they might take it.
That's right. So here's a few more that I'll just throw out here that I think you mentioned. The death. There's an attempt to address the death tax, taxing death.
Yes, we have one of the highest death tax in the United States. It's so bad in the state of Oregon. Almost anyone who is not ill could honestly, or well, if you're thinking about inheritance and giving assets to your children, you might want to leave the state. It's actually a conversation my family has had all the time, where we want to make sure that my parents want to give all the assets that they acquired to myself and my sister. So that way we can continue that generational wealth. And they just said, listen, I don't want to die in this state. I know that the state's coming for around 50% of my taxes because that's what I paid. And that's what she experienced with a lower tax rate for my own grandfather, who unfortunately passed away in 2020. Oregon is one of the worst states for estates and death.
Yeah. So there's water, there's CO2, there's death. All these things are being taxed. And now they want, among other things, of course, they want to give more. They want to give food stamps to illegal aliens, but they also want a statewide property tax and an additional new gas tax.
Yes, they increased the gas tax, which right now is already extraordinarily high. I believe currently we are charged around 50 to 60 cents per gallon by the state of Oregon alone. So this does not even add local taxes from your county or your city or municipality, not even federal government, which the federal government takes not even half, I think it only takes around a quarter of what you already pay for your other taxes. So the federal government is actually nice to us in this regard, that they don't want that much. They can tax us in many other ways. But Oregon has a mandate to basically take away anyone's ability to drive. I think this is just another way to force the concept of 15-minute cities. When I was in the campaign trail, when I was assisting a state representative candidate, Jason Fields, who I consider my friend to this day, we went to ODOT's public hearing in Portland, and we had protesters saying, we want to get rid of all cars. We only want trains. We only want 15-minute cities, which is a communistic idea where you don't leave your community, you're stuck to your community as a whole. It's honestly, in a sense, a way of bringing back serfdom to the modern era, because you can't leave the area you live in.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, is that it's imposing a poverty on people who are just working people who are just trying to make a living and commute to and from work. So there's this it's a 35-cent gas tax, and that's in addition to the fact that we have some pretty steep gas taxes already. Some which are hidden in the form of like energy taxes, refinery taxes, things like that. But then, the statewide property tax will hit people that, happen to have a home that's appreciated in value. And granted, they're not going to be able to vote this in directly. They're going to have to refer it to the voters, I believe. But having said that, they think it's a good idea because they say that they're losing all this money that they got from COVID, which wasn't supposed to be permanent either.
No.
And what they did is they dramatically increased all their spending, and now they say, how do we pay for all this spending?
Well, I have to ask a question to our government. So why does it take around $39 billion to run our state? Why do the $39 billion approximately the federal government gave me, which puts us around $70 billion, to run our state? I think there's extreme bloat, because our level of government spending is equivalent to New York, a vastly bigger state, a vastly more populated state, and a vastly more developed state. So why are we on the same level as some of the most expensive states in the United States?
Yeah.
Oregon has 300,000 people approximately. So why
we have just shy of 4 million people residents, but it's amazing because this is not the wealthiest state in the country. In fact, we have only one Fortune 500 company based in the state of Oregon, and that's Nike. That's it. All the others have either fled or just never bothered to come here in the first place. and we think we're going to be able to pay all of this stuff that, by the way, isn't working when it comes to the major issues that people are concerned about. And now we're talking about taxes are really uh, government inflation is what it is.
Yeah, so I was vastly wrong with my numbers. So I thought we were a much smaller state when we are, which thank God we're not.
Okay, we added some zeros for you.
But that also comes to the bigger problem. Why does the population of Oregon give so much money to our state government? Then we use it on programs that clearly are not working, but we keep on throwing money at it. We keep on throwing money at programs that fail to deliver. That's definitely insanity right there. And now we keep on taxing Oregonians more and give it to other individuals who are not true citizens of the state. And to be frank, here lately, in the state.
Well, that's the thing is that we are now at the stage where we are receiving a negative flow. We're taking in people who want to have essentially decriminalized drugs and free stuff from the state to live off of, and we're exporting business owners, small business owners, and people that actually are more likely to be paying for all this stuff, which is not, they call it a doom loop when it comes to a city. And there's some questions as to whether or not Portland's actually in one of those right now. That's the big talk.
I actually think Portland is in a doom loop. And I actually remember talking about this. When I was starting college and I was driving in Portland with my family, I remember saying this to my own mother. The way Portland's going, I see it only going two ways. It could be prosperous, it could grow well, or it will become the city of the ultra rich and the ultra poor. There will be no in between. It is on the track to become Detroit.
Well, that's what we have to get the message out to, is that folks can change this in the next election. And the work of doing this at the state party level was just advanced by the election of officers. And the great work of making sure people know about this is being done by Oregon Catalyst, Taxpayers Association, Oregon Watchdog that you're working with, and of course recruiting the next generation of leaders to lead this effort and to run for office. It's being done by the Young Republicans of Oregon. We posted all the links to this here earlier in the show, and I think there's a lot of great work. We're going to have you back on because I know there's going to be more updates, especially as the drama builds in the legislature, and 4,000 bills, many of which are bad, are going to be flying through there and threatening our futures. And maybe it's time we rallied and fought it. But thank you for joining us here today and for kind of bringing us up to speed in all of this. And I know we'll get the technology working even better next time, but we got it working this time. So thanks for being on, Chris, and best of luck with everything with Oregon Catalyst, Taxpayers Association, and the Young Republicans.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin.
And thank you to all of you for watching here today. Share this with everyone you can. A lot of people don't know we're doing this still, and yet there's a lot of people who would like to hear this information, and we love your comments. Yes, I do read them. We don't always answer them live actively during the show, but I did try to respond to some of them, and I know that a lot of folks would like to be able to talk back to the things that are happening. And so look forward to that in future episodes. Thanks, everyone. Tomorrow night, you should have Sonny and Don back with the next episode of The Cap.